Those of us commenting on what is going on in the world, I think will be defined by what we choose to focus on, maybe on a daily basis or however often we comment. And I think for me, it's important to comment on what nation states are doing, but it's important to comment on the people who live in those nation states. What is happening to them? As much as we can know what is happening, but we can also, I think, predict what is happening. And if you focus on that, I think you can predict correctly what is happening. So, for instance, if you focus on the UAE or the GCC, to me, the most important focus is what is happening to the migrant labor that come from India, Pakistan, Philippines, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Indonesia, Thailand. Surely many of us have transited through the Dubai airport or Abu Dhabi airport. We don't need to have gone into the UAE, but we can see that the entire airport staff is from one of these countries. Without these workers, this labor, what would the Dubai airport be? What would Emirates Airlines be? Nothing. So, to me, it is critical to focus on what is happening to these people and then their families who rely on remittances to keep afloat. Sometimes it is the only source of income, and sometimes it is the third or fourth income stream that helps boost the already meager income streams that some of these families are earning. So again, those of us commenting on the state of our world and on nation states and the behavior of nation states, I think will be defined by what we chose to focus on. For instance, 2 days ago, Donald Trump threatened nuclear holocaust upon Iran. I chose to focus on that and not on Kash Patel's drinking problem, nor on the bourbon that he was distributing amongst his staff and friends with his name on it. I think it would be an important story if the President of the United States, who has the authority to commit a nuclear holocaust, would not have actually threatened for the third time to commit nuclear holocaust. So that is what I mean, that we are all going to be defined by what we choose to focus on. Gaza is the graveyard of hundreds of journalists whose crime was simply reporting what was being done to their fellow citizens inside of Gaza, what was happening at the hands of the Israeli military, which is now widely called a genocide, a crime against humanity, a genocide. If it was not for these journalists, the world would not have known what was happening. And that is precisely why they were being hunted down, and executed, including their families. To this day, journalists in Gaza are being hunted down and executed. And that execution scheme of journalists has come to Lebanon. It was not too long ago when two female journalists were hunted, and one of them was executed. She survived the original strike, but then was executed. We would not have known what is happening in these places if it wasn't for these brave journalists who were then subsequently executed. The international media was not allowed into Gaza, still isn't. The same media chose to remain silent or chose Israeli talking points about why these journalists were killed. As in, Israel says they had connections to terrorist organization. Israel says. That was the reporting about the massacre of hundreds of journalists. CNN, Sky News, MS Now, BBC, German media, French media, and absolutely the US media. The opening lines were, Israel says. Then, a few months ago, CNN journalist Jeremy Diamond was detained along with his crew in the West Bank. And I believe his producer or his cameraman was thrown to the ground and treated very poorly by the IDF. And Jeremy kept filming, and then he reported this on CNN. Suddenly, there was a whole flurry of activity. Israel was investigating, and Israel then suspended this group of soldiers who said that they were going to create settlements and said a lot of very extremist right-wing supremacist kinds of things to Jeremy, who's a Hebrew speaker. They're back in business, those soldiers, by the way. But of course, CNN had to report it because their star reporter in Israel had suffered a minor situation with extremist IDF soldiers. The same anchors on CNN who had basically promoted the talking points of Israel, including that these are Hamas lies, we don't know what the truth is, at least Israeli soldiers don't rape anybody, all of which has been debunked over and over again, and Israeli human rights organizations have completely debunked what these American CNN anchors had been saying. High praise to Jeremy Diamond, who forces the American public to see what is happening. And because he is reporting, he's forcing his own colleagues at CNN to be reporting all of this on their segments, on their talk shows. So I give him a lot of credit. He has been reporting on a journalist just released from Israeli prison named Ali al-Samoudi, who had worked with Jeremy. And you can hear this report for yourself. What Jeremy is reporting was done to Ali al-Samoudi, and what he says is happening to others who were in detention with him. This is not reporting of journalists in Lebanon or Gaza. This is Jeremy Diamond of CNN reporting, and I'm going to play this segment for you. This was on Jake Tapper's program.
Never charged with a crime, held in Israel. Our world lead, the shocking story of a journalist arrested and never charged with a crime, held in an Israeli prison for a little over a year. He's Palestinian and has just been released, showing signs of severe malnutrition. He's unrecognizable to those who knew and worked with him, including CNN's Jeremy Diamond.
The man gingerly walking down the steps is Ali Al-Samoudi, a well-known Palestinian journalist.
I've worked with Ali several times, and I barely recognize him.
The 59-year-old has just been released from Israeli prison, where he was held for a year without charge and without a trial.
Ali, it's so good to see you.
The physical toll of his detention now on display. This is what Samoudi looked like when I last worked with him, 3 months before he was arrested. He lost 130 pounds in prison, about half his body weight.
They basically gave us food only to keep us alive. Breakfast consists of 1 spoon of labneh, a quarter spoon of jam. As for dinner, it's a luxury dinner for us. 2 spoons of hummus, and 1 spoon of tahini in addition to an egg.
It was only when he emerged from prison, where mirrors were banned, that he saw his face for the first time in a year.
My situation is difficult, and I understood that, but I didn't imagine it to this extent.
You had already interviewed, I'm sure, Palestinians who were held in Israeli prison, but what was it like to see it and experience it for yourself?
When I came to prison, the reality was different. It was a real hell. One time, after I returned from the visit with the lawyer, they threw us on the ground. An Israeli officer stood and stepped on my head like this and pressed my face into the ground for 4 minutes until I suffocated.
Israel's prison service did not respond to our request for comment about Samoudi's detention. But it's what Samoudi witnessed that's most painful, like the young man who got sick but was refused medical treatment.
He died in front of us. For no reason. He did nothing. Why? Are we not human?
That man is Luai Turkman, a 22-year-old from Jenin who was also held without charge. Israel's prison service didn't respond to our request for comment. Samoudi is among 105 Palestinian journalists who have been imprisoned by Israel since October 7, 2023, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists. 33 are still being held in Israeli prisons, nearly all of them without charge. That pace of detentions landed Israel as the 3rd worst jailer of journalists worldwide last year, behind only China and Myanmar.
When we asked the military at the beginning, when you were detained, we said, why?
I know.
They said you were, quote, identified with the Islamic Jihad terrorist organization and suspected of transferring funds to the group.
Bullshit.
Bullshit.
No.
They did not ask me once about any suspicions. My arrest is part of the Israeli war against the Palestinian press and media, to silence my voice and block my camera and break my pen, and thus prevent me from practicing my right that all laws and international norms guarantee, the freedom of the press.
Jeremy Diamond, CNN, Jenin, the West Bank.
Our thanks to CNN's Jeremy Diamond for that disturbing report.
I'm sure Jake Tapper finds it disturbing, but for 3 years now, I believe that he hasn't shown much concern for his fellow journalists. The problem is that Palestinian and Lebanese journalists are basically not allowed to be recognized as journalists. They're always reported on with a level of suspicion, and that is why every news item starts with Israel says. So, very grateful to Jeremy Diamond for his reporting from Israel and the West Bank, because he is not allowed to go into Gaza. I think the only time he was allowed to go into Gaza was as an embedded journalist and completely controlled by the IDF. So I think he has stopped doing that. At least from what I can see, he has stopped doing that. But this is what was done to his colleague, and his colleague is lucky to be alive because Shireen Abu Akleh is dead. She was shot in the head in the West Bank by the IDF. She's American. She was American. Has anybody been held accountable for that? The answer is no. So there we have it. Lately, I have been thinking, as the courts in the United States have continued to put their finger on the thumb for MAGA extremists and have been totally co-opted by the Republican extremists, about what really is going to be the legacy of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She was hailed as a hero by the progressives and the lefts and breaking all kinds of barriers, and she did. But at an advanced age, where she had terminal cancer, she refused to step down and make way for Obama to nominate a younger judge. She died on the bench. There was some reporting that Obama tried to convince her to step down, and she basically told him to go to hell. After that, that reporting just kind of went away. Democrats should have played hardball because the country was at risk, and many people knew the country was at risk. And sure enough, Mitch McConnell refused to let Obama appoint a justice, saying it was way too close to the elections. They stole the seat from Obama, and that's how Neil Gorsuch came onto the bench. And then Amy Coney Barrett was confirmed right before an election. That's the kind of hardball the right wing has been willing to play. While the Democrats were sitting around being processed and being polite, etc., etc., democracy crumbling around us. They had an aged senator on the Judiciary Committee, Feinstein, who had done wonderful work when she was lucid. But then she started not being lucid and did a lot of damage during the confirmation hearings for all these right-wing judges. Gorsuch, Kavanaugh. And the Democrats kept on being polite and process and procedure and not your turn yet. And here we are. So I don't know what Ruth Bader Ginsburg's legacy is going to be, but in my mind, her refusal to step down when Obama asked her politely to do so is going to go down in history, in my mind, as one of the biggest disasters in US history that led to the crumbling of democracy. The level of callousness and corruption and grift is staggering. But here is an example that would leave anybody's jaw dropping. The Secretary of Transportation, Duffy, took a 7-month vacation road trip with his family, 7 months on taxpayer dime, and said he occasionally worked. He occasionally worked, and he's proudly on Fox News, and he and his wife talking about taking a 7-month road trip. The Secretary of Transportation, while all sorts of issues were happening with crashes and engine failures and whatnot in airports, while the Iran war had broken out and gas is at $4.56. Airlines are saying we're running out of jet fuel. Flights are being canceled left, right, and center. The cost of flying is now zooming up, unaffordable. Today, the New York Times is talking about people are canceling their summer vacations because they can't afford it. And this man is on Fox News yesterday talking about a 7-month vacation and road trips and working occasionally. How is this even possible? But it is. It is. And who is going to be talking about, who's going to oversee this? How many inspectors generals were fired by the Trump administration? 18, 19, 20? So who is going to investigate this? The fact that they can proudly come onto Fox News, giggle and laugh and talk about this is utterly shocking. But there you have it. Everyday families are finding it hard to go to work because they cannot afford transportation. And this man and his wife is yucking it up on Fox News talking about going on a 7-month vacation. And I think they were forced to do this interview and make it sound like nothing to see here, it's wonderful, is because the day before he had come out again on Fox News and said, nothing to see here. American families should go on road trips. There is no such thing as a problem with the gas prices. It could be so much worse. We're better off than most countries. So go on a road trip. That is why he had to come out, get ahead of the New York Magazine coming out and reporting this. And had Fox News make it sound like it was such a wonderful thing and he did such a favor for the United States because it was about celebrating the 250th anniversary of this great United States. That's what it was about. That's how they thought they would get ahead of this article coming out. We should all be disgusted while low-income families are not able to afford transport to get to their jobs.